Welcome to your AI Injection, the podcast where we discuss state-of-the-art techniques in artificial intelligence with a focus on how these capabilities are used to transform organizations, making them more efficient, impactful, and successful. Okay, welcome back to your AI Injection podcast. We've got our regulars, Bill Constantine and Carsten Tusk, and the three of us are going to discuss reasons why AI innovation fails, according to AI consultants, which includes the three of us. Bill, Carsten, and I are all data scientists here at Xyonix. We already have an article up on our blog about this topic, which we'll kind of ping you to later on, that goes into a lot more detail. But let's go ahead and kick it off right now. In your experience, let's just kind of start really broad. What do you guys think are some reasons why AI fails to take off, fails to get features into a product, fails to kind of get some traction? I don't know, Carsten, you want to start first?
I can, because I can think of many reasons why AI will fail.
All right, well, let's take one of them.
All right, so one of them, lack of support. So, you have like one part of your organization that is interested in solving an AI problem. They have some data scientists, they're making some progress towards it, but at the end of the day, they actually, in order to feed their system or to get the data they need, they actually need support of other pieces and parts of the organization. And that is sometimes hard to come by. And so while there might be a chance to get AI, you will never get the data you need. And because collecting the data takes effort, collecting the data might require changes to existing systems that other parts of the organization might be resilient against. It might even have to change your customer facing interfaces in order to get that data. And you will get pushback. And so sometimes what I've seen is people try to, let's try it anyway and bring the start on the project, but ultimately it just fails because of lack of data, lack of support from other pieces of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we all know, like, companies have, like a certain type of DNA, if you will. Like some companies are, the rare exception are tech companies that have this kind of cultural accommodation for data-backed features and data-powered features, and a tolerance for some of the uncertainty, within machine learning. And other ones are like brand new to it. And sometimes, like I think what you're describing here at least resonates with me. Some companies at large maybe don't yet have the kind of collective motivation / DNA / imperative to integrate AI powered features into their products, but maybe a team or two or three does. And then there can be some some institutional kind of lessons or learnings that need to take place. I don't know, Bill, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think what Carsten mentioned is probably my number one issue in terms of stifling innovation with AI. I think if a company grows to be large enough and there's not this sort of incentive for other parts of the company to sort of trust what the data scientists are churning out, you do get this pushback on really cool stuff, and it may never see the light of day as a result of that. I've been in the situation in the past where that's actually happened. We're producing this really cool, innovative stuff with AI, but it just doesn't take with the company because basically they don't want to take the risk that they were willing to take when they were a startup, that they were willing to take when they were a younger company. So how does one overcome that? How does one overcome that, Deep? How do you?
I have an even better example. So, for example, I've
well, we'll be the judge of whether it's a better example.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we had one situation where the company wanted actually to improve customer happiness with their product, right? But the problem is the way that they measured it, or let's say the problem was that some of the departments' performance was measured against the customer happiness. Yes. However, the whole system was slightly tweaked so that the way that they measured it defaulted to the highest happiness rating, like a 5 out of 5 stars if you didn't enter your happiness, right?
That was a
And
good
so
one.
you would get like this. So
But
you would get like this
nobody wants
data
to-
distribution.
Nobody wants to
where-
like
Slightly
get the real
biased.
data because then they don't get the
Exactly.
bonus.
So the
Exactly. And
data
so
scientists put that into place.
yeah,
right?
it was the
But,
first
by
problem we
default, we're
identified. We looked at customer happiness and it was like, hey, you get 90% 5-star ratings. Don't you think that's strange? No, everybody's super happy with our product. And then we dug in deeper, and it was because it defaulted to 5 stars, and nobody ever cared of changing it, right?
Yeah.
People are lazy. Like 70% of them don't actually change that setting. But then our request to change that setting and either make it like an average, a 3 on by default, or even force the customers to enter some rating, kind of was hit with a lot of backlash, right? Because those departments were measured upon the customer happiness, and they didn't want to change that. So you run into simple issues like that.
Political.
I mean, like kind of related to that, I think you're kind of, I mean, I would just sort of like to take that up a notch. It's sort of this idea of dark data, like there's, which we run into a lot, where oftentimes the data scientists can sometimes be the very first people actually looking at data. Like where data is sometimes being collected. Maybe it's being looked at like in this example that you had for the sake of performance bonuses, but no other reason. And, but the data scientists might be the first ones to start looking at it from like a very different angle. And, inevitably, we find all kinds of anomalies and problems in the data and the way it's being gathered. And this kind of speaks to and so we need some changes there sometimes, where we need to go back and we need to say, like, we had a customer, or a project that I'm thinking of right now where, there was like a third party, collector of the data for this project. This was an insurance company project. There was like a third party that was gathering data, and there was like kind of minimal eyes on the data in some senses. And then we started kind of finding a lot of things that need to be addressed in order to get like a prediction out. Whether it was like predicting, like whether somebody's going to lapse or be a great customer or what have you. We needed to get these things resolved. And then all of a sudden you have this, so it's not necessarily just within the company that the resistance that you're talking about. Sometimes it's like, oh, now a project has to go to the company and the company has to go to a third party company that gathers data for something. And the further away a company is from the ability to change that data flow, the more problematic things can get.
Amen, brother. Amen. I have experienced that. Oh man, I've experienced that big time. And I think, is it the case with you guys? I mean, it's a lot of times we are the first people to look at the data in a very sort of serious way, but oftentimes we don't know the origin of that data, whether there's quality control on that data, whether it's rich, being collected from a variety of sources. We sometimes are just handed this stuff and we got to go through it, and then we start figuring stuff out, start asking questions. And at that point, when we start asking enough questions and found enough gotchas, that's when you start thinking about maybe we should be the ones that are taking this data in and not collecting it.
It's kind of like an estate sale. You get led into somebody's dark basement and you're like, do you guys have data? And you're like, yeah, we do have data. And you go down the stairs and you see like this dark basement with all kinds of stuff in there. And you're like, well, I kind of need a garden hose. I'm not sure there is one here. So
but there's a pile of rubber tubes over here, and then there's like some copper ringlets over there.
The mismatch of the data that they have and the problem they want to solve is actually a huge issue. And then, like we just alluded to, the challenge of getting the right data if it doesn't already exist.
You're listening to Your AI Injection, brought to you by Xyonix.com. That's Xyonix.com. Check out our website for more content, or if you need help injecting AI into your organization.
Have you guys ever been in this situation, Deep? I'm asking you in particular, where a client was beholden to a particular third party to get their data, but then that third party like went away. And so literally the source of their data was going to go away. And then they had to sort of scramble to try to replace that. I personally have seen that before.
it feels kind of like control of your data pipeline and your ability to affect it is like, really important for success, and the lack of that is really important for failure. Would you guys agree with that?
Totally, absolutely. I've seen it rear its ugly head quite a few times now, actually. So I totally agree.
I feel it's okay to go with the third parties in order to save resources if you don't have them in house, but you better have a backup plan, and you better have a backup plan to the backup plan. So in other words, if you had to, you should know how to get that data, right? For example, you go to a company that does web scraping for you or something and data acquisition, great. Don't build a team in-house to do that. Outsource it, great. But you know that if you had to, you could build that team in-house. And so that's your backup plan.
Yeah, or you could swap it out,
That's very important, I think.
Yeah, and like maybe, so we're kind of honing in on some culturally issues. Sort of kind of pivoting a little bit, let's look, so we've been looking at the culture of a company, but are there cultural issues within data scientists themselves that maybe lead to AI failures? And I'm, can you guys think of stuff
I have a great one.
Okay.
I have a great one.
Again, we'll be the judge of whether it's great.
No, I'm telling you, this is a slam.
Okay, let's hear it.
I bet it's okay. Here we go. I'm putting myself out there. No, I think I've been in a situation where we have these incredibly smart data scientists who know nothing about production, and they're very, very resistant to that. I think one of the things I appreciate about us, if I'm going to pat ourselves on the back, is that we've been around long enough to know that if you're going to get something out, it's not just a matter of you being smart and being able to come up with great, innovative scientific ideas and analytics. You have to be able to get it out in production. And actually, one of the things I can say I very much appreciate about Xyonix, and Deep, maybe you've pressed this, is getting an A to Z sort of thing, wheels in production going early, and focusing on sort of continual improvement of the product as you go along.
Yeah, I mean those are lessons we've kind of learned the hard way. Yeah, Carsten, you were gonna say?
I was gonna say we have seen the opposite too, though. So that's that's a double-edged sword, because we have seen companies where they were so focused on production that the AI discussion kind of like fell under the table, right? Where operational security was their main thing, and for every little thing, even before validating that there was an AI solution to their problem, they were worried about operational support and structure, et cetera. And my advice for that is look at your problem first, see if it can be solved. Because if it can be solved, you will find a way to put it into production. But the other way around is just initially really not important.
Yeah, that's a good point. And like, I've seen that not just from the vantage of security, but you see like folks worrying about all kinds of stuff but whether there's signal. And it's almost like companies have kind of a natural core competency, and if you take any meeting full of people, there's going to be like a natural set of core competencies there. Like some groups, like some companies are just like naturally great at like DevOps, for example. Like maybe it's like I think we this made me think of a project where it's like a healthcare company that was like really awesome at getting things into a SaaS production environment with very sensitive, patient healthcare data, which, as you can imagine, requires you to be pretty good at DevOpsy stuff, especially at scale. And what we've seen is like that kind of natural kind of core competency or DNA in the room, if you will, can hijack the conversation. It can like make it so that you're just talking about DevOpsy issues, or just talking about security issues, or just talking about architectural issues, none of which matter if there's no signal. Like if you're trying to predict the stock market, and get like 70% signal on a 50-50 bet on whether a stock's going to go up or down, and all you do is talk about security and stuff, you're not, you could spend half your lifetime trying to plan your company out, only to find out when you check for signal, like that's not exactly there. Like that's the golden goose that doesn't exist. So,
and there's a naivete about how AI in some people's minds can solve any problem, no matter what. And that,
Well,
it's just there's an expectation with those companies that are sort of maybe like DevOps focused. They generally get a lot of stuff done because there's a lot of sort of protocols in place for them to do so. And they don't necessarily have compassion for the data scientists when they're doing sort of research-based AI approaches that, sometimes we face incredibly challenging problems that aren't, you don't make progress sometimes. Sometimes
yeah,
it comes in chunks.
I think it's due to a lack of understanding of how it actually works, right? Where people
Mhm.
say, well, hey, if it can do this, then it should be able to do that.
Yes.
And what they don't realize is that one is totally trivial and simple, and the other one is almost impossible and has never been done.
That's right.
And if you don't have experience in the field, and if you don't really know how the algorithms work, you might, as a layman, not really realize that. And so people have unrealistic expectations sometimes, and that's also a reason why AI fails, because they go into this project with the idea, hey, I've seen it detect kittens. It should do this my project here with high accuracy as well. And it just won't. And they say, well, if it can't do that, then I'm not interested. Whereas really what they should be asking is, how can AI improve my existing process? Rather than, even if it cannot really solve my problem that I envision, can help me along the way, right? Can I put a human in the middle and double their work efficiency? Because I feel like AI is about efficiency improvement, not necessarily solutions to problems. Because we have this typical learning curve where we can get to like 70% accuracy on many problems fairly easily. Then going from 70 to 80 will take us a year, and going from 80 to 90 is 10 years of research. And many people don't realize that. They think it's a linear progression scale, and just like engineering, if I just put enough manpower at it and just work on it, it will make progress. No, it does not. It's exponential, and your progress might stop, because at the end of the day, AI is still research unless you're trying to do something that has done before.
You're listening to your AI Injection, brought to you by Xyonix.com. That's Xyonix.com. Check out our website for more content, or if you need help injecting AI into your organization. Going back to the idea of cultural kind of issues within the data science world, Bill, you kind of pointed out one. I'm going to just kind of add another one that I see a lot, which is data scientists, like most of us come from an academic background. Most of us have spent time slogging away in grad school. And very little to no credit generally in grad school comes from finding better data, and almost all credit and and medallions get handed out for those who come up with new algorithms, new deep learning architectures, who basically push on the models itself. And I see the same thing in the in the data science practical world, where it feels to me like almost an inordinate amount of energy goes into coming up with new models, model types, model structures, model architectural tweaks, but relatively little comes from the data, when in reality that the opposite is what really can push the problem, and make progress. What do you guys think about that?
I just want to chime in there. Sorry to interrupt, Carsten.
No, go for it.
I want to chime in there. I think that is very well put. My own experience coming from academia, I studied cardiodynamics, and there was so much research going on and being able to take basic ECG level types of signals and be able to do something good with it. And machine learning was starting to really take a foothold, and people were just going crazy thinking, well, I'm going to take this regular basic data, I'm going to feed it through this random forest and these neural nets, and they're going to come up with magic. When in fact, that really wasn't the case in many, many circumstances. When I had the opportunity to work with some cardiologists, and we got these implantable cardioverter defibrillator data, ICD data, where you're measuring literally when somebody was alive, and then at the end of it, their heart was fibrillating, so they're on the course of dying. We had that kind of data was just incredibly rare, and we're able to milk it for all of its worth. But that storyline came back and has come back many, many times. It goes down to the data first, and then maybe you can apply some fancy algorithms on top of it. But the attention to data should be the first thing.
Cool.
That's it. That's it.
I'm gonna switch gears here. So one of the problems that I see in the getting AI backed features kind of adopted into products is there's sort of a, and this kind of goes back, Carson, to what you were saying about almost this like belief that machine learning can kind of do more than it can. And you were talking about, getting, from, 70% efficacy to 80, 90, into the mid and high 90s is, it's like an evolution, it's a timeline. But a lot of times as a business, what I see is folks will put machine learning and the inevitable errors that the models will have up front and directly expose the users to them. And one of the kind of paradigms that, that I see being missed when you do that is you start obsessing on the inevitable errors that the models got. So you start quickly, you wind up in a scenario where maybe a salesperson exec, somebody's out like pitching, demoing, and then, the things fail. Like, it comes back with like, bad predictions, bad recommendations, whatever. And then the conversation, like the energy goes to like, can easily be distracted down to like one or two or a set of examples. When in reality, I think businesses would be better off if they stuck a human in the middle and they start looking at some of these problems more with a human in the loop, so that you sort of think about things differently. Like if you're trying to build, something that, I don't know, let's say is, trying to have conversations with highly, with psychiatric patients or with somebody with some psychological issues, kind of in the vein of a therapist, for example. If you rethink your business around what is a service that's being offered today, and how can I put some of those humans in that loop, and then take the machine learning, and instead of putting it front and center where it's right off the bat, it's talking to people in the form of a bot, in which case it goes off the rails quickly, but instead leverage it to kind of bring efficiencies to those humans. Do you guys, what do you guys think about the concept of like humans in the loop and AI errors just being too exposed?
I think it's very important, because I feel like, we come from I feel like the people that are managing AI projects are used to managing software projects where there's a bug, so please fix it, right? And that just really does not happen. People spot errors of your AI and they say, okay, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. The next version should fix those things. And that's just not really how it works at all. You can try to mitigate these errors, and that they're like very significant. You can try to build better models that have less of those errors, but you will never be able to address one specific example or get rid of something that some executive noticed. I think the message is, learn how to live with the errors and what is an error rate that you can accept, because you should not expect a flawless model. And I feel like that's where the man in the middle comes into play. And I like to call it like search space reduction, right? Let's say you have a problem where typically there's an error rate of, let's say, 80%, and there's a man that sits there 12 hours a day and has to look through 10,000 samples of errors, right? If I have a machine learning model with an accuracy of 50% or 60%, I can time that person has to spend manually correcting these errors by 50%. And I feel like that's a huge gain, right? We should not actually expect AI to replace humans. We should expect AI to augment them and make their life easier and increase their efficiency, not necessarily solve the problem 100%.
I'm going to switch gears for one last topic. Have either of you sort of seen scenarios where AI fails to like take off or make it somewhere based on, let's say, a suboptimal structure of team, where like the teams are just not structured right? So this is kind of an organizational question. Or maybe there's like insufficient team strength in a particular area, like where maybe there's not enough either core ML expertise or maybe programming expertise or distributed computing expertise or something like that.
I would say lack of programming expertise has certainly stunted the growth and potential of certain products that I've worked on in the past. And that's been a bit of a frustration, because I think it very much cut short the longevity of a really cool idea and cool project because folks just didn't know how to get things done in terms of an engineering perspective. I've never been personally involved in a team where there was a lack of technical expertise with analytics. So I've been sort of blessed in that sense, I guess you could say, but I've definitely fallen short on the engineering side, which is important.
Great. I think we're going to have to wrap up. I think we've covered maybe not all of the reasons machine learning or AI systems kind of fail to get out the door, but I feel like we've touched on a lot of those, a lot of the issues here, whether it's cultural or procedural. So with that, I will let's call it a wrap. Thanks, guys, for coming in and chatting.
Yeah.
And yeah,
that was fun.
All right.
All right.
Till next time.
All right. Till
Take
next
care.
time.
That is all for this episode. I'm Deep Dylan, your host, saying check back soon for your next AI injection. In the meantime, if you need help injecting AI into your business, reach out to us at Xyonix.com. That's Xyonix.com. Whether it's text, audio, video, or other business data, we help all kinds of organizations like yours automatically find and operationalize transformative insights.